who's this guy? That does not look like Matt Mandel, or at least Matt Mandel's. He's been in the woods and turned into one of the Duck Dynasty members, it looks like. So, hey there, what's going on, Dustin?
Oh, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Another day in the business.
Yeah, it looks like you're in your office.
I am. Yeah, I left Immokalee at about 2 o'clock this morning and made it to North Florida, Georgia, and now I'm on my way back south.
Yeah, for anybody listening to this, Dustin's day started about 2 o'clock this morning, and it's 6:30ish now, whatever. And I think you still got a couple of hours in the tank, don't you?
I do.
Well, we ain't going to keep you long, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time to stop and jump on here with me. Matt and I've been talking about the East Coast Feds deal. Certainly for us, we're not near as posted on that as you are. And, everything is moving to the States. I mean, you guys are kind of becoming the big boys in this space right now. And so it's really, really, really good to have you on and talk a little bit about what's going on out in your world. But before we get into the specific commodities and that kind of thing, I did want to touch base with you on some of the stuff that Matt and I got into last week. And we said last week, one thing we could talk about every week in this business is weather, right? It's always a factor. And I guess last week you guys, how was the weather last week?
Yeah, no, last Tuesday in Georgia it was spicy. 70-mile-an-hour straight line winds, 3 to 7 inches of rain, all came real fast, real hard and fast. It was intense, and that's in the current.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What kind of any crop damage? And that's in Georgia, right? That was in the Georgia piece. Yeah.
Yeah, North Florida, Georgia.
Okay. Any kind of on the bells, anything there? Bloom drop, crop loss for the future.
I don't think the bells. I don't think the bloom drop's going to necessarily affect that crop. It comes so hard and fast. I think there's probably going to be some crop loss to sun scald just because stuff got opened up and exposed. Had real good bushes, before that came through. I think any of the bloom that was setting at that time might kind of be that choicey type pepper toward the end of June anyway. So right. I don't think that's going to affect the overall. I think the biggest. But everything straightened out pretty quick afterwards. The next morning, everything seemed to have covered back up pretty good. For as violent as the weather was, the pepper seemed to have fared probably better than, a lot of the other commodities.
Yeah. What are some of the ones that maybe took a little more hit?
The squash definitely did for, 2 reasons. One, 7 inches of rain in Georgia clay, you don't get back in the field the next day. It ain't like South Florida sand that we catch 7 inches and be back to work the next day. Lot of scarring, so there was a lot of mediums. It was still hot afterwards, so skip a day in Georgia, and they always say medium Mondays because very few people pick on Sundays in Georgia, so it's medium Monday. But that was medium Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because nobody could pick,
Yeah, and I talked about, it's the thing about squash. If you ain't there, it blows up. Especially when you got that kind of water in the soil, and it's just going to explode and be those baseball bats when we get to later, we'll talk specifically about some of these commodities and how some of this affected prices and that kind of deal. But what do you see? Comparatively to history, this is pretty normal, right? You obviously don't always get 7 inches of rain, flat out. But storms, wind, all this is the nature of the beast, right?
This is the game. That's the game we play. It doesn't matter. Weather is always a factor, but I think it could be a good thing as a farmer, right? Selling a half a crop for twice as much is sometimes better than selling a full crop for a loss,
Yeah, No, I get that. How does it look? So, what's the outlook for this week? What's the outlook for the next couple? I mean, it's the weather, so I get it. But I mean, what are you guys kind of expecting?
Weather's good in South Georgia. North Florida. The projected outlook, next week, 10 days seems good. I'm sure there'll be an occasional storm, but nothing like we had last week, at least in the forecast. I think they'll recover. They are recovering. Squash cukes, the stuff that was really either scarred up and don't make grade, you got to throw it away. Especially we're doing a lot of open field trellis cukes, so you catch a 70-mile-an-hour wind, and it's going to rub on the string, and it ain't going to make grade. So It's got to go on the ground.
Yeah. Well, so is everything out of North Florida now? Is it all into Georgia, or you guys still got some stuff in North Florida?
Well, the North Florida Georgia deal is kind of the same thing. It's just there's as much veg growed right over the state line as in the Florida side as there is in the Georgia side. There's kind of that Lake Park areas, Jennings, Florida, which is more of the sandier type soils that fare pretty well on the veg and pretty well on the rain. And then you get a little further north into like the Tifton, Valdosta area. It's a little heavier ground, and that's where that clay where you really can't get into, you can't get back into the fields near as fast.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, it's like I say, spring is here and summer's fast approaching, so things just going to keep moving north, right? And moving up.
It was only 90. It was only like 97 in the field today, so it's not too hot.
Man, I don't know. I was talking to somebody earlier this week, South Texas. Now, I mean, I've been there. It's a hot sunbuck, I'm just going to tell you. And humidity like crazy and being that close to the ocean. And I don't know if it was the index. I mean, they said it was the temperature. I guess I should have went. But 110.
Yes. I talked to Jared Wiggins yesterday, and he's cutting down there in the valley, or in Edinburgh. And he said it was 110, 115 degrees, just unbelievably hot, just miserable.
And that's early. I mean, like I say, it gets hot, and honestly, even at 110, I mean, not only is that early, that's uncommon. I mean,
that's right.
That's smoking. So those folks are they're boiling.
And the crops will come fast. There's not going to be no legs or longevity to them crops, especially on the watermelons. That's all that's over there right now, to speak of. But they won't last long at that.
No, and and then what's been affected by the weather? They've had some big storms through Texas. On the veg side of it, you start getting up to up further north, up around San Antonio. There's a lot of squash that's grown in that area, and I know they've been having some serious struggles on production, and then, like I say, making grade and all that kind of stuff. Because not only is it hot, it's been super wet quite a bit in that area. So
bad combination for squash. It's a real bad combination.
I know that. Well, hey, speaking of high, the high cost of labor or the access to labor. So Matt and I got off into discussion on some reports on H2A stuff, and you're a guy that I'm sure you and Farmers Alliance, you guys are highly connected with the H2A program. Tell me a little bit about what you're experiencing, what's going on there. I mean, do you guys utilize the H2A program much?
Yeah, 100%. 100% of our labor is H2A.
Okay.
I would say out of our 31 farms that we represent, there might be 2 or 3 that still utilize some domestic labor, but everybody else is H2A. It's the only way. I mean, we have no other option, right? To rely on domestics is a fool's errand. You just might as well throw your money away.
Well, I mean, are you finding adequate supply, or are you guys just getting by with what's available through that program?
So we've been doing it long enough. I think we're in our 7th season full time, full H2A, and we've grown it every year. We do it all internally. We don't have a crew leader in FLC that does it. Our farms do it directly. So we got a really tight thumb on it, just to make sure it's right and to save some costs. Honestly, I was just on the phone a little bit ago with a guy that's in New Jersey right now, and we were talking H2A, and I said, he said, oh, the farming business just ain't no fun no more. I said, we're not farmers, we're labor managers. That's how we make our money. You got to be a labor manager. That's the reality of this deal is you got to be efficient with your labor. We're labor managers, right? That's how we make our money, and it's whether it's here or whether it's in Mexico, it's the same thing, right? It's efficiency of labor is the key to profitability.
So, the reports and everything I read, man, talks like there's opportunities, issues, whatever you want to call it, with the program. I mean, are there, or, and usually everything has something, but what do you think, what is it they need to do to improve that program?
Honestly, I haven't thought about a way to fix it. I'm working with what we got because I feel like I don't have any ability to fix it, right? I don't try to control things I can't control, so we play within the rules and go. The overall cost is, one thing is AWAR is a major, is a shot in the dark, right? Especially for us in South Florida. We put our contracts in. We got a meeting next week for next season's labor. June 1st, we'll be putting our contracts in. Well, we're negotiating with retail or whatever it is based on known numbers coming into the winter season, and come January 1st, it's a blind shot of what AWAR is going to be. Right. Last year we had a 40-cent increase, which it may not seem like much, but it's substantial. When you're talking across the labor deal. I mean, we're working. These guys come in August, September. And they'll, we bring them in 2 or 3 different groups, but they'll average 2,400 hours, 2,300 hours in that 9-month period. So, I mean, they're working 7 days a week, and they want to, right? But the overall, so if there was any way to freeze and I don't think they can actually reduce AWAR at this point. I think you'll cause an uproar in what we were getting paid $14.33 last year. Now you're going to bring me down to $12.50. I don't think that would go over well, but something that stabilizes it, right, would be a major help. Yeah,
or give you at least maybe a much more forward look, right? So when you're negotiating your contracts, have the deal a little earlier, so at least before you go into making your deals, kind of what you're up against.
Right. Yeah. And then you take. You take the overall cost of bringing them in. I was just going over them numbers the other day with my wife, and you're by the time you put the application fees and transportation and Monterey fees and all we figure it's about $1 an hour is what it costs over that 2,000 hours. Say if you're going to average 2,000 hours on a guy in a season. Bringing them here is $1 an hour, So you got $14.33, then you throw another $1 an hour for bringing them in, and then you throw another $1.50 an hour for housing, and now you're looking at $17 an hour,
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the thing, that what I've read is really when it comes down to it, it's the overall cost, given the fact of what the markets are allowing for, right? Which, there's been tons of discussion around inflation impacting us all throughout the supply chain, yet the ability to pass that on has been somewhat difficult, right? And to push that forward. And so all of us are facing all these higher costs, and that's kind of the thing on the HA program. What I read was realistically they got to take a look at that whole cost component and figure out, how do we get some of those costs in so American farmers can have a labor force, and not only have the labor force but have it to where they can actually have product to compete with and make money on.
Well, and to go to what I say it all the time is whether we were out at the Swipe Expo, right, and me and you and a handful are talking, and what's the Florida farmer doing at the Swipe Expo? This game. What we are as farmers, we've been put on this earth by God to feed the world, right? Whether it's America, Mexico, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this last year, you look at this last season and the weather, whether it's America or Mexico, we can't put all our eggs in one basket, right? There's so few of us that do this. To say that Mexico's going to do all the production it's you're looking for a disaster. Or say that Florida or Georgia or whatever. I mean, I know there's that common battle between Mexico and American farmers, but by golly, I don't necessarily agree with it. You know, I think there's got to be some kind of come together and a little more, you know, which I guess it plays capitalism and all that plays into that. But in the end, we're here to feed 350 million people, right? That's our job.
My deal is like, you know, for all of us in this business, you know, it's always my argument. It's like, look, guys, we're all in the fresh produce business, right? And, you know, if we work together, you know, we can win together. I mean, the real objective for all of us should be, how do we get more people eating the stuff we're growing, right?
That's right.
How do we get that consumption up, right? And quite honestly, you know, being able to have year-round production, I mean, you're not growing too much in Georgia in the wintertime, really. I mean, you know, it's just you're just not. It's just
cabbage,
the weather doesn't allow.
Some brassicas, right? Some brassicas, cabbage, cauliflower, you know, broccoli. You can get away with some of that, mustards, but you ain't going to get truck veg, right? Truck veg ain't going to happen in the wintertime.
But and just like in Western Mexico right now, I mean, everybody's shutting down over here. Why? Because it's hot as Hades over here, and ain't freaking nobody going to be able to grow nothing, right? So you know, you got so not only can they do, even if they can't supply everybody, and they can't supply them 12 months out of the year, and increasing production, consumers, you know, continue to eat because they get used to it. It becomes part of their normal routine, and so all of us working together to fill these gaps. And you know, there's going to be competition. I mean, right? I mean, ideally,
that's right.
The competition. You know, if we really approach it like, look, there's going to be competition. I'm going to be the best competitor in the space, right? You know, and I'm going to go out best quality, best delivery, best service. You know, I guess that's my philosophy. Again, I know that not everybody shares in that, but yeah, you and I are definitely aligned. I mean, us as groups working together, I believe will actually increase the amount of exposure of fresh produce, get more consumption. In the end, we all win. So
that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, you go to a grocery store, go to a Walmart, right, and you see what 40 feet of wet wall, 30 feet of wet wall. Publix is just, they're shrinking theirs. I heard that the other day. They're going from 30 feet to 20 feet, but there's 45, 50 aisles of processed food, right? That's our enemy, right? Not each other.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, 80% of the grocery store, like you said, that's our competition. That's who we're trying to take share from. And so, you know, something I read this week. So J.P. Morgan, I get these reports, and they had a guy do it was a market report. It's really a global report on farming, but some interesting statistics or interesting information came out of it. And just one thing, and I'm curious as I read this, I was curious to ask you, but it indicates that the fertilizing prices across the country have actually come back in. There's been, according to this, it's been about a 50% decline back to 2021 prices. Have you seen the fertilizing prices at least come in some?
So on the veg, we got with the fertilizer and chemical side of it, you got two segments. You got row crops, which what that report that you're referring to more falls in line with that, very, very little of the UANs and the row crop fertilizers we actually are able to use and make a quality product, right? We got to stay with potassium nitrates, and we got to very little ammoniacal or urea type fertilizers, which have came down. I would say overall it's came down some, not as much as some of the reports I've read, at least for the veg guys. I would say it's kind of like everything, whether it's a box company or anything else. You got some guys that have been enjoying high profits and they want to keep it there. And then I'm starting to see a lot more competition, right? Somebody that you've been doing business with forever and you don't check them. And then all of a sudden a new guy comes knocking in saying, hey, I could be 30% lower than the guy you're working with. And now all of a sudden it's a war between multiple companies, which is it's not a bad thing for us, but it's
yeah, no,
hard
for sure.
to make. It's hard to make it all work,
But overall, have you seen the fertilizer prices? I know they've stabilized, but have you seen them at least a little bit lower versus
Yes.
When they peaked?
I would say they're back to 1920 pricing. I mean, they're probably back to where they were.
Not 1920, 2020.
2020.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, exactly. I know. I know you might be older than me.
2020.
Gotcha. Well, here's a trivia question. All right, so in this data, there's some other stuff. Here's a trivia question. This was definitely interesting. And of course, again, this includes all farms. I mean, this is hog farms, cattle farms, everything, right? It's total deal. What do you think in the U.S. the foreign entities of owned U.S. forests and farms are? What do you think that percentage is?
The foreign interest.
The foreign entities that own U.S. ag space. Basically, it says U.S. forests and farms.
Forest and farms. Hog side's really big, so that's chicken, cattle. I don't think it's 20%. 15?
3.4%.
Yeah.
I mean,
minimal.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about it, and of the foreign holders that are largest, Canada's number one at 31%.
I wouldn't guess mostly timberland. Probably timberland in Montana, and
yeah. Yep. And then the smallest entity is Chinese. They own 350,000 acres, right at 1% of all acres out there is
the hog. The Smithfield hog side. I think that one is kind of masked, but yeah, I know that one's they own a big percentage of that through
of the Smithfield deal.
Yeah.
And then just for other things that are out there in the news, and maybe all of this is in our space, right? Maybe that's why it's bigger news for us. But apparently the Bill Gates Foundation, the Gates Group, they've been out buying up farms, so to speak.
Yep.
Apparently it's 270,000 acres of acquired from pensions and funds, which represents 0.03% of all the farm out there. So I guess maybe if all that's in our space, it seems a lot bigger. But when you start to look at, U.S. Agricultural stuff, it's pretty small. Honestly, it's mostly 45% of all farmland is small farms. 45% is.
And I think it's under 5.5 acres or something. I mean, it's a very small number. In relation to.
Yeah, what they consider to be a fall. Yeah, you're right. What they consider small. It doesn't say what it is, but you're right. It's something super small. When they say small family farm, they mean really small. So 45% is the small family farm. Which anyway, certainly for me, things I did not know, right? And interesting statistic, because I would have absolutely said at least 20%. Was foreign owned, and possibly, like I say, in the spaces we're in, that's maybe the case. But when you think about the grain producers, and you think about these cattle ranches and stuff like that, I mean, dairy farms, and when you start to include all ag, it may ours may be a higher percentage versus that, or who knows? Maybe we're in that same bucket. We're probably less than 5%.
I think we're probably less, honestly. I think our bucket would probably be less than that number, honestly.
So I know you're out busy today, knocking around the watermelon fields, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So how's the crop look?
Yeah, it's a smooth transition. I feel like I think there's ample supply for Memorial Day. I think retail's done a pretty good job of filling the DCs up. We'll see what the sell-through is. It's Tuesday morning. We'll see what the POs are like on Tuesday morning. That's the big question. But the crop overall looks good. I probably rode at least 1,000 acres this morning, from all stages that'll be cut. We started last week, and we'll cut. The North Florida crop will hold in there. At least our stuff will until the 25th June. I mean, it looks good. The crop looks good.
Yeah, and how's the market overall on the watermelon deal?
Right now, it's strong. I think the big fruit 36s, it's gotten some pressure uh, coming into this weekend. Not saying this necessarily shouldn't. I think we've had over the last, and I hate to say it because I sell produce and I farm produce, so I kind of like I gotta hate myself, right? Because I say
Yeah.
some of the time the price has been too high, right? In April we had
Yeah.
$500 watermelons, which if you got to move volume or coming up to moving volume, the worst you get people used to a $14 piece of fruit at the shelf. It takes time to flush that through, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
What are you about 160, 175 a bin? Where are you guys at?
190 to 200 is really
Damn.
where
Okay.
this week's been on 60s and 45s. 36s are, in that 175, 180 range. I've heard as low as 154 today. There's some people already trading and making some deals. So
Yeah, I'd heard some stuff. Yeah, I'd heard some things. And like I say, it's probably that hangover, getting prepared for the hangover effect next week, coming out of this Memorial Weekend and kind of gearing up for that. Yeah, and we get started. We had some spitters, as they say. We started with over here on some stuff coming in, but we've got our seedless deal kicking off in a couple of weeks, so we'll be. It's actually a little late. I mean, it was so it stayed cool enough over this way that it's pushing the crop a couple of weeks later than what we should be starting as early as next week, but it's going to push it out a little bit, but. Hoping the markets stay at that where you're talking about versus what I was hearing earlier today. So
yeah, I don't think they will. I think next week we're looking at I'm hoping we can stabilize staying at 165, 168 range on 45s and 60s. I think 36s, if we can hold that 148, 154. I mean, from the crops I've seen, it'll return money to the farm. So there's a big enough crop that will work. Will it be as good as the last couple of years? No, but I mean, what do they say? The cure for high markets is high markets, and that's what we're gonna. I feel like that's what's gonna happen this June.
Absolutely cured. Yeah, you're likely right on that because I'm sure there's a lot of hopeful gamblers out there that planted a few extra just because they thought that high market was going to be forever. But it is the case, and I hope you're right. Like I say, if we can stay in that 160 range, everybody wins. Consumer, farmers, the whole deal through, really. So,
which is hard. I mean, with you guys, I don't know I guess pretty much all your fruit can stay west, right? You don't have to really come east with nothing.
Yeah, we try. Usually you don't get too far past the out the Midwest. It all depends. How big, what's going on in Texas, and how with the weather that they have. The last couple of years. I mean, it's been really hard for those guys up and around the Houston area to have much of a deal. So I don't know what that looks like, but typically if they're in the game, we might go as far as Chicago, but majority of it stays out here.
But with freight rates, what's the freight rate between Nogales and Chicago? It's got to be 5,500, don't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's north of $5,000 for sure. So that starts to make things super expensive.
You got $100 in freight to make equal us. I guess you'd be at a 130. You'd be at $130 FOB to kind of equate the same out of Georgia to there. So,
yeah, but I mean, what's your freight up to Chicago? What do you guys? 3,500?
Probably 3. Yeah, I'd say 3.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it definitely causes us a little more pain trying to get into those markets, but there's usually enough consumption, just because of where the crops could be grown during this time, right? We're kind of the main game like you guys are over on the East Coast, so
that's right.
It usually works out all right. All right, well let's get into the veg pricing and what's going on in the veg world. And I think I was telling you earlier, I'm gonna pull up some handy dandy graphs through this Produce IQ group. Let's start with bell peppers. Let me see here if I Because on the bell pepper front right now, we don't have anything in Mexico. It's all done over on at least on this side. I think there might be a few things. I don't even know if they've started anything out of central Mexico, but just very little in the bell pepper space coming up out of Mexico. Most of it's moved to the California Coachella deal's going, and they're rocking and rolling. I'm hearing 1895. They were still showing on this the graph here that we're looking at. Less than that, and of course this is taking in all qualities, right? Not just the large, extra large fruit, but what do you guys got? What's going on in the bell pepper world for you, market wise?
I really feel like I feel like they're trying to beat it up. I do know there's an ample amount of pepper going to be coming off out of the Georgia region for the next 2 weeks. I don't really see the need to beat it up, but I felt it today. And maybe it's a holiday weekend coming into the holiday weekend. Maybe it's I don't know. It just kind of felt I felt like it should stay stable, but it doesn't feel like it's going to. I feel like there's going to be some downward pressure on it.
Well, you look at this graph. You look at this graph here, and then keep in mind this data points are a week in arrears, right? So we're looking, the lines that are this year's through Friday of last week. It's not taking into account this week, but based on this, it looks like it's going to get ugly for a couple of weeks if it stays anywhere close to trend on this. Now it was ridiculously high going into the end of May last year on the bell pepper. There was nothing available last year, so it made the crash much bigger. That was that high prices cured the high price program back then, and it really drove it down. So, but I think you may be on to something. I think, unfortunately, it may be a little bit of a bloodbath in the bell pepper space for the next couple of weeks, anyway.
Yep, I think so. I think between the Kentucky crops and North Carolina, they're if the crops hold on, then it'll be a halfway smooth transition in Georgia. But I feel like as hot as it is and what the weather is, that we're going to see that crop get run through pretty quick, and then toward the end of June may see that typical increase or spike that normally happens end of June through 15th to 20th of July, where there's just Michigan hasn't started and Georgia's done, and they're just kind of the crops in limbo.
Yeah. Well, what about the squash world? I know, when you and I talked a couple of weeks, you guys were still kind of working hard to make a market, and you got the weather last week, which obviously reduced production and what you guys had coming. Did you guys finally get some relief out there in that space?
Yes, the squash deal is the hot sister right now, and I don't think it's I don't believe it's long lived. I hear the glass half full guys saying that it's going to last for 3 weeks. I don't necessarily believe that. Not from what I've seen in the field. We got some production going to be starting further north.
Well, maybe this graph representation will give you a little more optimism, because this dude has been pretty well spot on with last year's pricing the last 4 or 5 weeks, and if we're just halfway close to this damn graph on here, if we even were below it slightly, I'll take it and run, because it shows nothing but a climbing market between now and another 10 weeks or so on this deal. So if you look at this thing from last year, squash market, and it's been following the pattern of this past year, close 5-6 weeks in a row. It shows this thing could be good, and I definitely think out here we've got at least another probably 8-10 days on what we're looking at. I mean, this week gray's $18.95, yellow $20.95, Zook's anywhere from 20 to 22. And then when you get to the organics, I mean, the yellow's pretty close. Organically, it's about the same as conventional, but Zook organics like 25 plus is what you can get. And so, I don't know. it feels a little bit like California maybe doesn't have as much this year. And again, if last year's any indication, it bodes well, at least against last year. Now, I don't know. I'm like I say, squash guys, we tend to be, we've seen enough markets go super good to go super bad in a real quick time frame. And, when you're dealing with a 35, 40-day crop, it doesn't take long for some entrepreneur to become a squash guy, and all of a sudden we got another 300 acres of squash coming into the market. But I don't know. I think, like I say, looking at the way things have trended last year, and I can tell you, realistically, since we've been in the summer deals, it's definitely better than that October, November time frame, which is a terrible disaster.
Right. Yeah.
So we shall.
Yeah, and it's the summer deal. The summer deal is in such small acreage. I think that's what you're seeing there. Is there's not, especially when you come east, there's not any really big squash growers outside of Georgia, right? It's in small open ground, unirrigated. So which causes the volatility, right? They catch a rain. It's good for them. Catch too much rain is bad for them. Don't catch a rain, it's bad for them. That's what's caused that volatility, which keeps the market up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you say, and again, it comes down, like I say, in those small places, or really in the regions, right? We'll see what the weather patterns are. I saw a report for the month of May, although when I read this, I guess I should have talked about it before, but it indicated that the east was going to stay, was going to be hotter through the May than normal, and actually out west was going to be cooler than normal, and it's pretty well held true to that. So I haven't seen any outlooks on the month of June, but that's really what it's going to come down to. You get a region that gets something, those small farms get taken out, it's going to change things. Well, hey, cucumber space, it's gotten a little better, and it's got signs that it's going to continue to get better. I don't know. What do you think? What's going on with you guys in the cukes?
The Georgia cuke deal never really lasts that long. I think that weather last week probably is what caused a little bit of this hope in the cuke market. Florida's all wrapped up. Really nothing coming out of there, which, ultimately cuke should probably have, a Mexican pole cuke and an Eastern yellow belly cuke should have two different SKU numbers, in my opinion. They're not the same. They're not the same.
Yeah,
products.
exactly. There's a difference. Now people might argue with you on that, but I think you're right on.
They both eat the same, but they're different. They're a different beast. It's a whole different game.
At least ought to be different spec sheets maybe for it. So.
That's right. But we North Carolina is going to be starting cukes, I would say, 10 days, which there's some bigger acres there, right, for this June deal. So I think that bodes well for either side of it, at least for supply side. I think there'll be a help there. Georgia's crop still looks good. The stuff we got coming in Kentucky is probably the middle to end of June. So, maybe it'll. I like steady markets. If we could ever figure that out.
Don't we all? Again, we really. Everybody, I think, talks about that, and I don't know. Nobody's figured it out. Maybe AI will figure that out for us. That's what we need to plug into our AI model. How do we get stable fresh produce markets? So. We'll see. But so, what are you guys price wise? What are you guys seeing on supers, selects? That.
Supers. I think that $18 range is the right number. You may be able to get a little bit more. Selects. It's probably that's kind of all over the place. The our quality, the ground cukes. Is it a pole cuke? Is it a ground cuke? So it causes a wide range. It causes a wide range in pricing. What somebody's calling a select.
Yeah, we're pretty much in that camp. And honestly, the select deal is a little bit even wide ranged out here right now. The super deal, it's a pretty well a solid $18, $19 on the supers, and feels like it might have even a little strength to push up above 20. The select side, it's come up, it's stabilized, and good selects. You're looking at 16, but there's marginal stuff down there in the $12 range. So it's a pretty big gap. But again, it really comes down to what kind of select you're talking about. So, but one market that I don't think you're in much. So be thankful. I mean, it wasn't. You wanted to be there a few weeks ago, but it's no longer the place to be, and that's the Roma market. Oh my goodness, that thing is it's in a tailspin.
And they're coming out. It's all coming out of Mexico, or because I know there's not much coming from the east. I mean, there's nothing over here. Yeah,
no, most everything is now out of here, and it was so. Was it? I guess. First part of last week, I mean, to talk about, how things turn in this business. I want to say it's the first part of last week, it was $20 and people looking for. In fact, they were buying them at the farms in Mexico for $17, $18. And so if they can do that, they ain't sending them north, right, unless they're going to get 22, 23. So you had that front end last week, and then all of a sudden the bottom came out, and now we're 10, 12. I mean, that thing flipped hard and fast. So,
but what's I mean, you got a close enough connection to the Mexican farms. A $10, $12 deal does that give a return to the dirt?
Yeah. 10 to 12. I mean, it's you can live on that, right? I mean, that's definitely something that they're like anybody else. More is better, but no, 10 to 12, honestly, and even. This time of year, it's not the end of the world. So I guess last but not least, Dustin, the hot pepper deal, right? It's been a fabulous market, but looks like the fabulous market is coming to a close soon. Based on what we're
on half of it. You got Japs and Cubans you can't give away, and you got Poblanos and Serranos still holding strong and kind of, at least on this side, still holding strong in a good market. So it doesn't make a
What are you still north of 50 on the Poblanos? Where are you at on the Poblanos?
No, Poblanos, I would say no. We've never got it up that high on this side. We're probably 26, 28. Yeah. Okay. 26, 28 on the Poblanos, and Serranos, they were north of $50, $60. For. But them things need to be $40 anyway with the labor cost of harvesting them. So.
Yeah, and the jalapeno market, it's about a $17 bill more or less out here, and Anaheim's closer to 15. So.
Yeah, they're trading a lot cheaper on this side. On the jalapenos, it's pretty sick puppy over here. But it's a lot of these small farms. It's an easy thing. It's kind of like the squash deal. There's some of these small farms that can put in 4 or 5 acres, 3 or 4 acres with no marketing plan, causes a disaster for all of us when you're getting outside of your contract business or your retail business, and you got to go to the street with it. Well, your neighbor's selling it for $10 because they're a week old and been in the cooler. Well, now everybody thinks that's what the market is.
Yeah, and. Honestly, that the jalapeno deal is sliding. So it's $16 this morning. It may be by the time I wake up tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 14. So I mean, it's definitely on its way down. But
I know I had some $10 Japs off. I had some $10 Japs offered to me this morning. So I know that's out there on this side.
All right. So man, it's been fabulous. I know that, like I said, you started at 2 o'clock this morning. I hit you up midday, jump on this call. So I can't thank you enough for taking an hour out of your day, sitting in the heat and, working from your office, chatting it up. And I definitely, I think having you, part of this is a great addition, bringing you in periodically to touch base with us and kind of let us know what's going on. But, Farmers Alliance, so we didn't really do an official introduction on you, but, I do want to close with one, so B&H Farms, that's you, and then the Farmer Alliance group. You're part of that, and you kind of help head that up, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So the Farmers Alliance is the marketing arm for 31 different farms from Michigan to South Florida.
Gotcha. Right. And, if people are looking for some amazing veg items, this summer, right? I mean, it's Farmer Alliance, jump on lines at farmeralliance.com. What's the easy way to look you guys up?
Farmers Alliance or farmers-alliance.com.
Farmers-alliance.com. Perfect. Well, man, thank you very much, Dustin. I appreciate it.